In 2025, the story of the Decker family seemed like one that would end in tragedy, but no one could have predicted just how dark it would become. Travis Caleb Decker, a 32-year-old father, had been embroiled in a bitter custody battle with his ex-wife, Whitney, over their 3 young daughters. The stakes were high, and the tension had been building for months. Travis and Whitney had divorced in 2023 after nearly a decade of marriage. Their separation wasn't clean, and a court battle for custody of their daughters, Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia, quickly followed. While Whitney was awarded full custody, Travis was granted limited visitation rights. Those visits, however, were never straightforward. Travis's behavior became a growing concern for Whitney, and the courts placed strict conditions on his time with the children. But despite the court's ruling, Travis wanted more. He was determined to regain full custody, and this desire turned into a dangerous obsession. His ex-wife, Whitney, did what she could to protect the children, but she was often met with resistance, and the relationship between her and Travis soured further. By May of 2025, the situation was reaching a breaking point. Despite the restrictions, Travis was still allowed to spend time with the children. It was a Saturday morning when the court-approved visitation began, just another weekend, one that would change everything. Travis arrived to pick up the girls from Whitney's home. He had made promises, as usual, to spend a few days with them, a temporary arrangement that had become routine, albeit strained. But this time, things didn't go as planned. Hours passed, and when the scheduled time came for the girls to return, there was no sign of Travis. Whitney began calling him, but there was no answer. Desperation set in. When her calls went unanswered, Whitney contacted the police. By now, her fear had escalated to panic. The search began in earnest, and the authorities would later learn that the tragedy had already unfolded by the time Whitney made that first call. It's hard to imagine the moment when Whitney realized something had gone terribly wrong. How could a father, someone entrusted with the care of his children, do something so unthinkable? Yet the signs were there: the isolation, the unresolved anger, the sense that something inside Travis had snapped. Yet no one could predict the full scale of the horror that would follow.
May 30th, 2025 started like any other day. Travis Decker arrived at Whitney's home, as he had many times before, to pick up his 3 daughters, Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia, for their scheduled weekend visit. The girls, eager to spend time with their father, said their goodbyes and got into the truck, ready for what was supposed to be a routine weekend. But as the hours passed, something began to feel off. Whitney, expecting to hear from Travis when he was ready to bring the girls back, grew increasingly concerned as time ticked on. The minutes turned into hours, and soon it was well past the agreed-upon return time. Whitney began to call Travis, but there was no answer. She left messages, hoping he was just running late, but deep down she knew something wasn't right. With each passing hour, her anxiety grew. She reached out again, trying to get in touch with Travis, but there was still no response. Her worry turned to panic as she realized the worst, that her daughters were missing, and their father was nowhere to be found. At 4 p.m., Whitney made the difficult decision to call the authorities. The police began their search, and soon law enforcement from multiple agencies was involved. A missing persons case was opened, and the clock began ticking. But little did Whitney know, her worst fears had already been realized. The events leading up to this moment had unfolded in ways no one could have imagined. As the hours stretched on, the search intensified. Law enforcement scoured the area looking for any signs of Travis and the children. It wasn't until the next morning, on May 31st, that a breakthrough came. The authorities discovered Travis's abandoned vehicle near Rock Island Campground in Chelan County, Washington. The truck was found in a remote area, a location that seemed strange given that Travis had no reason to be there. In the truck, investigators found disturbing evidence: a broken cell phone, an open bottle of water, and traces of blood. These items painted a chilling picture. What had happened to the girls, and why had Travis abandoned them in such a brutal manner? Whitney's calls to Travis went unanswered, but little did she know, his silence would become the eerie echo of a tragedy that had already taken place. The search, once focused on finding the missing family, took on an entirely new urgency, finding out just what happened to these 3 innocent girls and why their father had abandoned them in such a brutal manner.
As the search for Travis Decker and his daughters intensified, the full scope of the tragedy began to unfold. What was initially a missing persons case quickly turned into something far more sinister. Authorities launched an all-out manhunt, not only for the girls, but also for the man they now believed to be responsible for their disappearance: Travis Caleb Decker. Days passed without any word from Travis, and the authorities knew they had to act fast. A multi-agency search was initiated, involving local police, state troopers, and even federal law enforcement. Helicopters hovered overhead, searching for any sign of the missing family. As law enforcement combed the area, the community's fear grew. Could a father truly be capable of such a horrific crime? It seemed unimaginable, but the evidence was beginning to tell a different story. On June 2nd, after several days of searching, a breakthrough came. The abandoned truck that Travis had been driving was discovered near Rock Island Campground in Chelan County, Washington. At first glance, the truck looked ordinary enough, no signs of forced entry or anything obviously out of place. But as investigators began to carefully examine the scene, they found evidence that painted a chilling picture of what had transpired. Inside the truck, there were signs of struggle. Blood was found in several places, along with an overturned bottle of water, a broken cell phone, and discarded personal items. But perhaps most alarming was the discovery of zip ties and plastic bags, the same types of items typically used in restraint or suffocation. As investigators pieced together the evidence, it became clear that this wasn't just a case of a father taking his children and disappearing. No, this was something much darker. The blood in the truck and the signs of a struggle suggested something far more violent had occurred. The authorities now had a clear understanding that they were dealing with a potential murder case, not just a missing person situation. But where were the girls? Despite the discovery of the truck, there was no sign of Peyton, Evelyn, or Olivia. The search moved into the wilderness, with search teams covering miles of rough terrain. But even as the clock ticked, no trace of the children was found. In the days that followed, the sense of dread deepened. The authorities, now certain that Travis was involved in the crime, focused their efforts on finding him. Law enforcement issued warrants for his arrest, and the search expanded across multiple states. With each passing hour, the hunt for Travis became more urgent, but as investigators dug deeper into his past, they began to uncover troubling details. Friends and family members described him as having erratic behavior in recent months, struggling with mental health issues, and exhibiting violent tendencies. The further they dug, the more it became clear that Travis was a man on the edge, a man who, for reasons still unknown, had crossed the line and taken the lives of his own children. The search for Travis Decker seemed endless. Days turned into weeks, and the hope of finding the missing girls alive slowly faded. Law enforcement, now convinced that Travis had played a role in their deaths, expanded their search across multiple states, tracking leads and following every possible lead. But the questions were mounting. Where had he gone? Was he hiding? Or had something even darker taken place? Then, on September 18, 2025, came a break in the case. In a remote area near Leavenworth, Washington, a hiker stumbled across human remains. The discovery was immediately flagged as potentially crucial to the case. Authorities moved quickly to secure the area, hoping this might be the break they had been waiting for. On September 25th, after weeks of waiting, authorities confirmed that the remains found in Leavenworth belonged to none other than Travis Caleb Decker. The man at the center of a nationwide manhunt, the man believed to have murdered his 3 daughters, was dead. The news of Travis's death was met with mixed emotions. For the family and the community, there was a sense of closure, but that closure came at a high cost. The haunting truth was that Travis had never been apprehended alive, and the full details of his actions would remain a mystery forever. Was his death an act of guilt, or was it simply an attempt to escape justice? No one would ever know for sure. The authorities pieced together the timeline of his final days. It seemed that after abandoning his truck near Rock Island Campground, Travis had made his way into the wilderness, possibly intending to hide and evade capture. But as the weeks passed and the search intensified, it became clear that Travis had not simply been hiding. He was running from the truth of what he had done. While Travis was on the run, the mystery of the Decker sisters' deaths remained unsolved. Authorities now had to determine how the girls had died, where exactly the murders had taken place, and what had driven Travis to such a horrific act. Forensics teams scoured every inch of the area surrounding the abandoned truck and the site where Travis's remains were discovered. Evidence suggested the girls had been asphyxiated, bound with zip ties, and their bodies disposed of in a remote location. But still, there were unanswered questions. What exactly led Travis to snap? Was there a trigger, something that pushed him over the edge? Or had he been planning this all along? As the investigation continued, it became clear that the full story behind the tragic deaths of Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia would never be completely known. With Travis dead, there would be no trial, no confession,
and no way to fully understand the extent of the horror he had inflicted on his children. In the end, justice was never fully served, but what remained was the heartbreaking reality that a father, someone meant to protect and care for his children, had taken their lives. The search for answers would continue, but the mystery surrounding Travis Decker's fate would never be fully solved.
In the wake of the Decker family tragedy, the questions kept piling up. How could a father, someone who had been entrusted with the care and love of his own children, commit such an unforgivable act? The public's shock and disbelief only deepened as the details of the case unfolded. But even as the investigation continued, a chilling sense of incompleteness lingered. What drove Travis Decker to murder his daughters, and how did it all spiral so out of control? The authorities had pieced together the facts as best they could. The custody battle, the strained relationship, the disturbing evidence found at the crime scene, and Travis's eventual disappearance into the wilderness. But none of these details truly explained why a father would snap and murder his children. Was it a result of deep-seated mental health issues? Was it a sudden, catastrophic decision made in a moment of rage? Or had something been festering inside Travis for much longer, waiting for the right moment to explode? While mental health was discussed as a factor in the case, it wasn't enough to fully explain the horrific actions that took place. Travis had reportedly been struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, a consequence of his time in the military. But while this may have contributed to his increasingly erratic behavior, it didn't absolve him of the cold, calculated murder of his daughters. His behavior over the preceding months had been erratic, violent outbursts, threats, and a lack of emotional control, but none of it seemed to predict the sheer brutality of what he would do. As law enforcement and experts delved deeper into Travis's history, a picture began to form. He had been in and out of therapy and had a history of failed relationships and personal struggles, but none of this seemed to justify his actions. For Whitney Decker, his ex-wife, and the rest of the family, the emotional toll was immeasurable. The betrayal of a father killing his own children was an unfathomable blow, and the unanswered questions made the pain even worse. The community, too, was left to grapple with the shock. How could someone they had known and interacted with end up doing something so horrific? The sense of betrayal wasn't just felt by the immediate family, it rippled throughout the entire town. Friends of the family, neighbors, and even acquaintances struggled to reconcile the man they had known with the monster he had become. And then there was the lingering question, could anything have been done to prevent this? In hindsight, many of the warning signs were clear. The custody battles, the emotional volatility, the isolation. But for all the signs, no one could predict the extent of the danger that Travis posed. The case left everyone with one undeniable truth. No matter the reasons, the result was irreversible. Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia would never have the chance to grow up, and the haunting reality of their deaths would linger forever. Their memories would live on in the hearts of those who loved them, but the questions surrounding their deaths would never fully be answered. Like if you think justice wasn't fully served in this case. Comment below with your thoughts. Do you believe Travis's actions were triggered by something deeper, or was it a moment of rage? Don't forget to subscribe to The Untold Trace for more true crime stories that keep you questioning the truth. Hit the bell icon to stay updated on our next chilling case.